Elephant's Foot. On April 26, 1986, the world changed forever within the walls of Chernobyl's Reactor 4. During a safety test, a massive power surge triggered a steam explosion that blew a 1,000-ton lid off the reactor core, releasing 400 times more radioactive fallout than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 40 years later, Reactor 4 remains the most forbidden tomb on the planet. It is encased in a safety confinement, which is a massive 36,000-ton steel arch designed to trap the 4 tons of radioactive dust and fuel pellets that still simmer inside. The true horror lies beneath the structure, the elephant's foot. This is a solidified mass of corium and mixture of nuclear fuel, so radioactive that just 300 seconds of exposure would be a guaranteed death sentence. Even in 2026, the area is a restricted spanning 2,600 square kilometers. While wildlife has reclaimed the surrounding forests, the interior of Reactor 4 is a silent, lethal clock. The radiation levels are so high that robots used for maintenance often fail as their circuits are fried by the invisible energy, the Plutonion. 2,000 years ago, the Romans believed they had discovered a literal gateway to hell. In the ancient city of Hierapolis, a stone archway led into a dark, mist-filled cave known as the Plutonion. It was a place of terrifying miracles. Thousands of spectators would gather to watch the priests lead a line of massive, healthy bulls toward the cave's mouth. As the crowd held its breath, the animals would suddenly collapse, their eyes rolling back as their life was sucked into the tomb. Even birds flying too close to the temple's arch would drop dead mid-flight, falling like stones to the ground. Yet, the priests walked into that same deadly mist, stood over the fallen animals, and emerged completely untouched. The people were frozen, convinced the priests had been granted divine protection from Pluto, the god of death. For centuries, the demon's breath of Hierapolis remained a supernatural mystery, until scientists finally checked the cave with modern sensors. The miracle was actually a masterclass in ancient deception. The cave sits directly over a deep volcanic that leaks concentrated carbon dioxide gas. Because this gas is heavier than air, it settles into a lethal, invisible lake that sits about 2 feet deep across the floor. The bulls died instantly because their noses were submerged in the poison. The priests, however, knew the secret, so they stood on their tiptoes and kept their heads high above the invisible lake of death, breathing the fresh air while the world watched them survive the breath of a god. Snake Island. Off the coast of Brazil lies a lush, emerald-green island that looks like a paradise from the deck of a boat. But the Brazilian Navy has declared it the most forbidden land on the planet, and for a terrifying reason. This is the home of the golden lancehead, a snake so lethal that its venom is designed to melt human flesh on contact. The legend of the island is whispered in the nearby coastal towns, centered on the ruins of an old, abandoned lighthouse. The story goes that a lone lighthouse keeper once lived there with his wife and 3 young children. One night, a window was accidentally left unlatched. As the family slept, the snakes began to enter in. They woke to the sound of thousands of snakes sliding against the floorboards. Desperate and screaming, the family ran for their small boat on the shore, but they never made it. When the Navy arrived to investigate the darkened light, they found a house overflowing with serpents, but not a single human remained. Today, the island is a silent, slithering tomb. It is estimated that there is a deadly viper for every square meter of ground, meaning that for every step you take, you are already standing within striking distance of 1,000 deaths. Poveglia Island. In the shimmering waters of the Venetian lagoon lies Poveglia, a small island that has become a massive, overgrown tomb. Its horror began during the Black Death, when Venice was so overwhelmed by the plague that they began shipping the sick, the dying, and the dead to Poveglia to rot in isolation. The legend says the soil of the island is 50% human ash, composed of thousands of bodies that were burned in massive plague pits to stop the spread of the disease. Fishermen today still refuse to cast their nets near the island, terrified that they will pull up the blackened skulls of victims who have been waiting beneath the waves for centuries. But the true nightmare started in 1922, when a mental asylum was built on the ruins of the plague hospital. The story centers on a sadistic head doctor who believed the patients were crying out because of the plague ghosts that still haunted the halls. To cure them, he began performing horrific, experimental brain surgeries in the asylum's bell tower, using crude hammers and chisels. The screams of his victims were said to be so loud they could be heard across the water in Venice. Eventually, the doctor himself began to lose his mind, claiming he was being chased by the vengeful spirits of the plague dead. In a fit of absolute terror, he climbed the very bell tower where he had tortured so many and threw himself off. Today, the island is strictly forbidden to the public. If you listen closely from a boat at night, you can still hear the chime of the tower's bell, even though that bell was removed over 50 years ago. Hoia Baciu Forest. Deep in the shadows of Transylvania, there is a forest named Hoia Baciu Forest, a place where the laws of nature seem to have been rewritten by something ancient and malevolent. The trees here don't grow toward the sun. Instead, they twist into skeletal spirals and jagged knots, looking like souls frozen in mid-scream. The legend began decades ago with a local shepherd who led his flock of 200 sheep into the dense fog of the woods. Neither the man nor a single animal normal was ever seen again. There is the famous account of a 5-year-old girl who wandered into the trees while playing. 5 years later, she walked out of the forest wearing the exact same clothes, which hadn't aged a day. She had no memory of where she had been and believed she had only been gone for a few minutes. At the center of this nightmare lies a perfect circle, barren ring of dirt where not a single blade of grass has grown in over a century. This is the dead zone. People who step into the circle have emerged with strange, geometric burns on their skin and accounts of seeing glowing, orb-like eyes hovering just inches from their faces. The Doomsday Vault. Hidden deep within a mountain on the remote island of Norway lies a structure designed to outlive humanity. It is known as the Global Seed Vault, but to the rest of the world, it is the Doomsday Vault. The entrance is a massive, concrete wedge that glows with a futuristic blue light cutting into the permafrost of a frozen mountain. There are no windows, no guards, and the doors are reinforced to survive a nuclear blast or a direct hit from an asteroid. It is a silent library of life, holding over 1 million packets of seeds from every corner of the Earth, a biological backup drive in case the world, as we know it, is wiped out by war, climate collapse, or a global plague. For years, the vault was considered the safest place on the planet, but in 2017, the Earth itself tried to reclaim it. A record-breaking heat wave caused the permafrost to melt, sending a terrifying torrent of water rushing into the entrance tunnel. However, the true strength of the vault isn't just in its walls, but in its location. Because it is buried hundreds of feet deep into the sandstone mountain, the water froze solid before it could ever reach the precious seeds. The vault remains a forbidden tomb of hope, guarded by the freezing cold of the Arctic, waiting for a day that we all hope never comes.